Alright, Ronan MMA, welcome back to the channel. Now, UFC 290 wrapped up last night. That card was stacked from top to bottom, and my god, it did not disappoint all the way through. Incredible fight card. I picked a number of really large underdogs that I'm quite proud about. Not one which, to be fair, not a lot of people did, but we will get to that shortly. We are going to start with the first fight of the night and move our way up as usual. Like and subscribe, I would greatly appreciate it. KIRK versus Esteban RIBOVICS. A little hairy in the first round for Esteban RIBOVICS, but he came back in rounds 2 and rounds 3 and beat the brakes off of KIRK. KIRK seemed to gas slightly, and RIBOVICS' striking was incredible, and once he was able to stuff a couple takedowns, that fight was essentially over. Not in terms of a finish, but KIRK didn't have a whole lot for him on the feet. There was a powerful shot every once in a while that he would land, but Esteban RIBOVICS looked pretty phenomenal out there. Great performance by him. Yeah, man, it was a fun fight. I said that it would end in a finish in either way. It did not, but it was still a perfect way to open up that fight card. Great fight. Moving on up to Shannon Ross versus Jesus Aguilar. Okay, I picked Jesus Aguilar. I said I thought he would submit Shannon Ross. I said Shannon Ross is a little too, I think he got to the UFC a little too late in his career, a little too old. He's got a women's record, and he keeps adding to that, right? So Jesus Aguilar goes out there and starches him in 17 seconds. I did not expect that to happen. I thought he would get it to the ground and submit him, but when the threat of a high-level grappler is always there, there's always the potential that, they shoot or even drop levels, and your defense goes out the window because you immediately go to stop that takedown. And what a KO. That was absolutely savage. Shannon Ross should probably not be fighting in the UFC anymore. I think he's a fun fighter, and he's a good striker when it's just pure striking, but my god, when you mix other things up, that's not enough. And Jesus Aguilar just killed him. Like, do you want to see a dead body? Go watch that fight. Incredible. Moving on up to Cameron Saaiman versus Terrence Mitchell now. Cameron Saaiman was a massive favorite, obviously. He is very good technically. I said that he is like the more technical version of Adricus du Plessis, and I don't think we can say that any longer, but I will get to that later. I can't wait to talk about that fight. Great performance by Cameron Saaiman. Incredible. Very good. Terrence Mitchell seemed to gas out almost immediately, whereas Cameron Saaiman, who held on to a guillotine for a very long time that was tight, high elbow, like tons of leverage on that thing. Credits Terrence Mitchell for not tapping, but Cameron Saaiman did not blow out his arms, and he continued on, and he beat the brakes off of Terrence Mitchell, and that was an incredible performance. South Africans did amazing last night. Okay, great job by Cameron Saaiman. It's going to be very exciting to see him fight guys in the rankings. I don't think he fouled yesterday. Terrence Mitchell, though, if this is I could be mistaken. Herb Dean needs to not be a ref anymore. I can't remember if it was this fight or another one up the card. But my god, dude. When someone puts their toes in the cage and grabs 20 times, and all you do is say, watch your toes. Like, don't do that. You need to do something. Because then he gave... Who else was it? He gave somebody else... it might not have been this fight. It might have been a different fight. Maybe I'll remember moving on up, but regardless... My bad. Tangent over. Moving on up to Vitor Petrino versus Marcin Prachnio. I picked Prachnio as an underdog. He did not get the job done, but I will say, considering that Vitor Petrino was such a large favorite going into this fight, I don't think that he like met the criteria to be that big of a favorite, to be that hyped up. Okay, Marcin Prachnio, while he is good on the feet, he's not the most powerful individual, and he kind of looks like a guy who, goes around parking lots and like collects grocery carts for a living. Like, that's kind of his body type. Also his face. Okay, that's what he looks like, and he's very, very awkward in the way that he moves, and he's not lightning fast. He's not ultra powerful, but he was cracking Vitor Petrino with a number of shots, and I can just see guys at the high, up the ranks in the light heavyweight division having an absolute time with Vitor Petrino. He kind of looks like a smaller Cyril Gane, slightly, a little bit, maybe the body type and the the head, but man, he's not nearly as good as I think a lot of people thought that he was. And I think that this fight showed that, because he was having troubles in the first round, a little bit. He had troubles in the second round. He had to end up taking him down multiple times and to get the finish eventually late in round 3 with the arm triangle. So good on him for getting the finish eventually, but he was not fighting like a 3-1 favorite. Do you know what I mean? Or at least he didn't look like it in there. All right, that wraps up the early prelims. We're going to be moving on up to Jimmy CRUTE versus Alonzo MENIFIELD. I picked Jimmy CRUTE to win. I thought he would make the adjustments needed, and use maybe a little bit of higher fight IQ and not try to stand and strike with Alonzo MENIFIELD, because Alonzo MENIFIELD is extremely powerful and fast, and Jimmy CRUTE is very good at grappling. Now, Alonzo MENIFIELD also made adjustments, though, and his adjustments prevailed, okay? His takedown defense looked a lot better, even his ability to get back up. Jimmy CRUTE seems to have a lot of time getting to the actual takedown. Like, once he gets you down, you're in trouble. He's extremely talented on the ground, and he's big and strong, but he has a hard time shooting. He just looks very awkward, and I swear to God, man, if there's a guy on this roster that looks like he's got one too many chromosomes, it is Jimmy CRUTE, okay? And credit to Alonzo MENIFIELD. That was great to hop on that submission. He saw the opportunity presented itself. He went for it. Jimmy CRUTE shot a kind of a shitty takedown from a little too far out, and then they scrambled, and it was good job by Alonzo MENIFIELD to cinch that up. Man, Jimmy CRUTE had a tough career. You know what I mean? He was looking good in the Anthony Smith fight, and then that calf kick happened where his foot dropped, and then he had the hard fight with Alonzo MENIFIELD that ended in a draw because he was getting hit way too much, and luckily for him, Alonzo MENIFIELD was deducted a point in that fight, and then he loses this one in pretty spectacular fashion. So unfortunate for Jimmy CRUTE. Great performance by Alonzo MENIFIELD. Crazy that it hit at his age. I know that they're at a higher weight class, but not just the power, the speed is still there. It's pretty impressive to see. Moving on up to my first very big underdog pick of the fight. Okay, Yasmin Jauregui versus Denise Gomes. I picked Denise Gomes to win. And I didn't say she would knock her out, though, I didn't think. But she has fought better girls. She has gotten quite a few finishes. And I did not understand why they would have Yasmin Jauregui, or however you say her name, at a minus 390. That was insane to me. She hasn't really fought anybody. You know what I mean? And that proved true. I was correct. Denise Gomes fucks her up. 20 seconds, okay? I think the stoppage was perfectly fine. She seemed to be complaining about it a little bit, Yasmin, I believe it was Jason Herzog. Whoops, can't remember totally. But, yeah, man, good underdog pick on my part. Denise Gomes gets the job done. She looked like an absolute savage in there. And once she dropped her, she did not let up. And I think that was a perfectly fine stoppage. Moving on up to Tatsuro Taira versus Edgar Chairez. Good God, dude. Tatsuro Taira closed at a minus 975. And here's the thing. While he did look very good, and he looked very good, especially on the ground, obviously, as we all know. On the feet, things got a little hairy, especially, late second round, third round, and then even that guillotine choke that Edgar Chairez had Tatsuro Taira in for the last few seconds of that fight. That was tight as fucking all get out, okay? Tighter than a finger in a bum. And if this man had 5 seconds left, he would have submitted Tatsuro Taira. I said in my picks video that I would probably pick Tatsuro Taira against a lot of guys, even in the top 15. I'm going to have to rethink that. I don't know that I could, okay? He does not have good enough stand-up to fight with the best guys in this division. And while he is an incredibly talented grappler, he seemed to also get a little bit tired in round number 3. And that is a problem when you were fighting a guy who is unranked, if I'm not mistaken. So, you know what I mean? I know Edgar Chairez is very good, and he was game. He did not stop, and he's not going to get tired. But, man, I was expecting a little bit more from Tatsuro Taira against Edgar Chairez last night. Now, to be fair, he's had like a fight fallout, extra long camp, probably, things like that. It was at a catch weight. They both looked big, though. You know what I mean? It wasn't like Edgar Chairez was much bigger than him or anything like that. So, for a minus 975, It was not what you would expect, in my opinion. And I think that he's got to work on his stand-up quite a bit. Okay, now moving on up to my second very good underdog pick of the card. Robbie Lawler versus Nico Price. Okay, you hear that? John Kozak, Freemason hair, or whatever it is. He wasn't too old. 41 years old, goes out there and starches Nico Price in 38 seconds. Cracking him with big shots in the clinch. Beautiful work. That was the best fucking ending to a veteran's career that I've seen in a very long time. So much better than Cowboy, which was very hard to see. It was hard to watch Cowboy go out the way that Cowboy went out. The way that Robbie Lawler went out last night is exactly how you want to see all of your favorite fighters go out. It was, honestly, man, I know a lot of people pretend like that shit's soy and cringe and whatever. Like, it was kind of cool to see a guy like Robbie Lawler get emotional, man. It was, you know, just to see what the sport means to him, what his career meant to him, because he is so stoic typically. He acts like nothing's a big deal. And then to see him, you know, tear up at that highlight reel, it was really something. And I'm very glad that the UFC decided to do that, man, because we haven't really seen that for a whole lot of guys. Now, to be fair, not a lot of guys plan their retirement and say for 100% certainty, like, this is my last fight. Whereas Robbie Lawler did, right? So the UFC had time to prepare and to throw that together. Just so many good memories, man. Guy's an absolute fucking legend. And good, man. Great on Robbie Lawler. That was a good performance. Nico Price sucks, okay? He just does. Man, I was a little concerned when Robbie got into the cage because it looked like he was almost getting emotional then. But didn't matter. He prevailed. Big shots in the clinch. Starches Nico Price. Another big underdog pick by yours truly. Moving on up to the main card. Bo Nickel versus Val Woodburn. Okay. Man. Fuck Bo Nickel, dude. I can't stand this guy. He tried to be much more humble and cool in the post-fight interview with Joe Rogan. I feel as though maybe he read the room a little bit and realized that perhaps some people were annoyed with him and didn't like him. He seemed a lot more humble, honestly. If you were to just base what you thought of Bo Nickel off of his post-fight interview last night, you would like him. I mean, how could you not? You know what I mean? Great job on the feet. He was hopping in and out of range as if he's been striking for a very long time. However, Val Woodburn did manage to crack him with a good shot, which is good because it shows that Bo Nickel is tough and he's not going to get deterred when you crack him. But I could see, like, he's not untouchable. Do you know what I mean? He's not invincible. I could potentially see people beating him. Good on him, man. However, you know what I mean? Late notice replacement. Very late notice. A guy making his debut. It's not like he's been fighting absolute fucking killers in, like, PFL or one championship or something like that. It was just... That was meant to show... That was meant to be a showcase for Bo Nickel. Do you know what I mean? And a lot of these fights will be as he moves his way up the ladder. But while it was extremely impressive, and it's cool to see him get a finish based on his striking and not his wrestling abilities, it's kind of tainted by the fact that this guy was making his UFC debut. And I know that Bo Nickel's only had one fight in the UFC, but with the amount of hype behind him and the wrestling accolades and all that, you kind of want to see him fight guys a little, like, I don't know, man, a little more established, perhaps. Like, I hope that they give him an established UFC middleweight next, as opposed to a guy making their debut that they called up on short notice. And I know that it wasn't his fault that happened. He was supposed to fight Tresean Gore, who is not established and is not very good, and it probably would have been the same outcome or similar. Now, I said he would get a submission, but KO and TKO will do just fine. I said round 1, so we got the round correct. Okay, good job by Bo Nickel. Moving on up to, this was, in my opinion, my favorite underdog pick of the night, because I actually said that I didn't think Dan Hooker would finish him, but I thought that Dan Hooker would bait him. And he fucking did, dude. Jalen Turner needs to move up to 170, okay? This motherfucker weighs Clearly way too much, okay? He weighed in at, what, 158? Missed weight. Giant guy. And it's crazy that people used to talk about John Jones as if him being 6'4" with an 84-inch reach in the light heavyweight division was unfair. We got a guy in Jalen Turner who is 6'3", and I believe an 80-inch reach, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong about that, but I'm just going off the top of my head. At fucking 155, 50 pounds less than John Jones. This is a body that would be comparable with John Jones at light heavyweight, and this motherfucker's fighting at lightweight. Okay, he's a weight bully. Now, things got a little hairy for Dan Hooker in round number 1. Guy ate a clean head kick as if he was Yoel Romero, okay, and just kept coming. The real Slim Shady, Dan Hooker, please stand up. And he did. And he beat the fuck out of Jalen Turner in rounds 2 and rounds 3. Adelaide Bird needs to be fucking shipped off to God knows where, okay? I don't know where, but she needs to go. She should not be judging a fight ever. It's been a long time since I've heard that name. Maybe I'm just not paying attention. But, man, Jalen Turner looked good on the feet in rounds 1. Rounds 2, Dan Hooker made it a fucking dogfight. And what's even more impressive is that he did break his arm somewhere. I haven't rewatched that fight. I'm wondering if it was off of a block kick or what it was. But it should not have been a split decision. That was a unanimous decision. Dan Hooker beat the brakes off of him. But my point about saying that I didn't think Dan Hooker would finish the fight is that Dan Hooker to win by decision was plus 600. So if you would have bet that prediction, you would have made bank. Okay, Dan Hooker looked real fucking good. He just kept coming, and he almost strangled Jalen Turner at the end of round number 2. I started wondering why he would not make Jalen stand back up after he dropped him in round 3. I would imagine it had something to do with his arm. He probably felt as though, I felt this guy on the ground, I almost strangled him, I can control him on the ground, my arm's fucked, I don't really want to be standing in case if I block another kick it gets worse and they have to stop the fight or something like that. Fucking A, man. Dude, when you're looking at this, I've got UFC.com pulled up and I'm looking at the fight between them. It looks like KSI and fucking Machine Gun Kelly. Okay, that's what it looked like. And, you know, out of those two, I would probably bet on KSI, but out of Dan Hooker and Jalen fucking Turner, tatted up, real Slim Shady, Dan Hooker, all day long, bet, dude, you would have made bank on that. Now we're here for the one that I'm the most excited to talk about, dude. The most excited by a country fucking mile. Okay, Robert Whittaker versus Dricus du Plessis. Now, I've got a lot of people coming back in my comment sections and calling me out. A lot of South African gentlemen. And I can't be mad, man. Because this isn't like when Izzy wins and people come and get pissed at you, or when, you know what I mean? Because that's like expected. Izzy's the minus 400. Dricus du Plessis was a plus 300 going into this fight, or around there. Robert Whittaker was a minus 395, I think, at the close. And Dricus du Plessis went out there and put on a fucking masterclass, dude. Nose-breathing Dricus. I don't want to hear anybody denigrating Dricus du Plessis or saying that that performance was luck or fucking what have you, dude. That was incredible. Okay, and I'm going to tell you why. We are going to go over the first round slightly. Now, Dricus du Plessis stole round number 1. Okay, which is crazy because round number 1 is a round that Robert Whittaker will give up. Sometimes not like intentionally give it up, but sometimes he's a little slower and making reads, and then he starts to pull ahead in rounds 2 and rounds 3. Robert Whittaker was getting off immediately from the start, and he was doing very well. He was landing shots on Dricus, getting out of the way of Dricus' shots, slipping his right hands, like, looked phenomenal. He looked very good. Okay, he was backing Dricus up. 1, 2, 3 jabs, right hook, like he would land left hook. He threw the head kick maybe once or twice, didn't land clean, but it landed. He looked very good. Got a takedown on Dricus. Controlled him for a little bit. Didn't do a whole lot with him. Dricus is a massive body. I would imagine that's a hard man to hold down and keep there. Okay. And then Dricus du Plessis gets like a Ronda Rousey style like head and arm throw, which is not supposed to work in men's MMA, but I think because of his size and his strength, he was able to pull it off, right? It wasn't as gracefully as like a Ronda Rousey flipping a chick, but he got the takedown, so it didn't matter. And then immediately splits him open with an elbow, right? Not wasted, like, energy depleting bullshit ground and pound. Nice clean elbow to the face of Robert Whittaker, cuts him open, beats him up on the ground for a while. Whittaker's not bad on the ground either, so it's very impressive that he was able to control him in the way that he did and beat him up and steal round number 1 from Robert Whittaker. And then we move into round number 2, and Bobby Knuckles again doing pretty good, right? Lands a few good shots, comes out there pretty aggressively, and then Dricus du Plessis, this is why it's not luck, this is why it's not bullshit. Dricus du Plessis stuck him on a Robert Whittaker entry with a straight right from the southpaw stance, so like a jab, and it landed perfectly right there, flush nose mouth area, and it stunned Whittaker badly. It was like his fucking like he lagged, okay, because he like almost fell, stopped himself with his hands, got back up. Dricus was at that same time as landing that counter being defensively responsible, okay, jab but duck down to avoid the counter hook of Robert Whittaker, or the hook of Robert Whittaker that was coming in. Didn't even realize that he had clipped him the way that he did. Sees Whittaker's a little bit hurt, coming back up to his feet, and patiently hunts him down for the finish. That was beautiful. He did not rush forward. He looked like a completely different fighter compared to the Darren Till and the Derek Brunson fight. Completely different fighter. Nose breathing Dricus is real. Okay, it's real. And the way that he finished him was so impressive to me. I was shocked. And for the first 2 rounds of Moreno Pantoja, I had to go back and rewatch them because I was still in shock and I couldn't fucking believe what I had just seen. And at first I was a little upset. Dude, the wherewithal to go to the body, right? Like, that's not what you think of when you think of Dricus du Plessis. I know a lot of South Africans are going to be like, well, we knew he could get it done. Yeah, but you couldn't, and I'm not saying this to be shitty, you couldn't articulate it in a way that made sense. You would just say, oh, he can get it done. You didn't say, oh, well, he's going to be able to do this and this and this. When Rob's hurt up against the cage, covering up, and his body's right there, ripe for the taking, and Dricus huge right hook to the body, I think that's what actually put Whittaker, like, away. Because after that, his body language changed. Kind of curled up, and he was done. And the accuracy of the finishing blows from Dricus du Plessis was extremely impressive. I was stunned. I literally was, like, blacked out for the first 2 rounds of Moreno versus Pantoja. And I was a little bit upset because Robert Whittaker is one of my favorite fighters. I'm a fan of Dricus du Plessis, but I was still a little bit upset. And then Israel Adesanya enters the cage. And then I was extremely happy that Dricus du Plessis won. Because not only did he win, he won in a way where I could see him doing very well against the champion. But not just that. I hope to fucking God he beats the shit out of Israel Adesanya. Again, for all you Izzy fans, there's only one person making this racial, and it's Israel Adesanya. He's clearly a racist, okay? He doesn't like white people. It is what it is. I may be African, but I am no brother of yours. Dricus, dude, that was a beautiful line. That was like a George St. Pierre type trash talk line. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not impressed with your performance. Polite trash talk. Israel Adesanya is the cringiest motherfucker on planet Earth. For whatever reason, on Ariel Helwani's show, he called it Ancestry in Me. And then last night in the cage, he called it 36 in Me. And then he called it 26 in Me. He's 3 times he's fucked that up. It's 23 in Me, bro. Take 2 seconds to Google it so you don't sound like an idiot. So you can say the correct thing. Okay, but regardless, dude, Dricus du Plessis handled that like a fucking champ. If you were to look at if you were to watch that interaction, and you had no context surrounding it whatsoever, you would be like, oh, obviously Dricus du Plessis is the champion. Look at how composed he is. Look at how he handled himself. Look at how he just had his moment stolen from him by a cringe Israel Adesanya who's consistently calling him ninja for some reason. Okay? And then Dricus just walks away of it because he's like, I'm not going to engage with this. And he turns around to the crowd, lifts his arms up, has his moment. Fuck Izzy. Okay? Man, that guy, there is honestly nobody who can make me dislike them quite like Israel Adesanya can. Juliana Pena is one, but Israel Adesanya is fucking god-awful, dude. And I, honestly, after watching that fight, that finish of Robert Whittaker was more impressive than the way Israel Adesanya finished Robert Whittaker, which was a long time ago. And I know that MMA math doesn't work, but you look at his performance against Whittaker, the second time around, arguably lost. The first time, he finished him because Whittaker was rushing in like crazy, and he was open for counters. Dricus du Plessis fought a Rob that was not doing that. Dricus du Plessis fought a Rob that was fighting like Rob, and he still fucking did it. He almost gets finished by Derek Brunson, and he goes out there and fucking finishes Robert Whittaker within 2 rounds. Incredible, dude. Incredible. And I don't know that I'm going to pick against him moving forward, even if he's fighting Israel Adesanya, because he's very durable. He's durable. He's strong. He was able to control Rob on the ground. He was able to not let Rob get anything off on the ground when Rob got him down, whereas Rob took Adesanya's back. Man, that blew me the fuck away. Blew me away. Incredible. Great performance by Dricus du Plessis, the African king. Okay, the true African king. He didn't say that. He never said true. He never said real. People are still saying that. The media is still saying that. I still get comments in my video saying that he said that. He never said that. But I'll fucking say it. He's the real African king. Fuck y'all. Okay? Moving on up. I've never been so happy to watch my favorite fighter lose in my life. Moving up. Co-main event. Brandon Moreno versus Alexandre Pantoja. Pardon me. This was a great fight. And I saw some people having issues with the scorecards, as one usually does when a fighter they like loses. As I mentioned previously, I was like slightly blacked out for the first 2 rounds of this fight. I just knew that it was crazy. And not because I was fucked up on anything, but because Dricus du Plessis just blew my fucking mind. And I was still comprehending what had just happened. This was, I went back and rewatched it for that reason, or at least the first 2 rounds. And I don't think that there should be any controversy. I think Alexandre Pantoja won that fight 48-47. And I think that you could argue 49-46 about as easily as you could 48-47 for Moreno. For me, it came down to round number 3. Because Brandon Moreno did some work on the feet. To be fair, Pantoja did also, but Brandon Moreno definitely did more work in round number 3. Barely outstruck him. 29-25 total. 26-23 significant. Pantoja got 2 takedowns. Brandon Moreno got 3 reversals. But the problem is that in between those reversals, Pantoja was able to take his back and control him for a while and, threaten with the choke. Not seriously, but was constantly fighting for the finish. So, yeah. I gave Moreno 2 and 4 rewatching it, and 3 was a little bit of a toss up, but I think I could give it to Pantoja pretty easily, so I don't have any problem with that decision whatsoever. That was a phenomenal fucking fight. Phenomenal. They've both improved a ton. Pantoja made a read on the fly, which I thought was very impressive, and I really wish that I could fucking do video breakdowns, but I don't want to get a copyright strike until this one is dealt with. Alexandre Pantoja was timing an uppercut because when Brandon Moreno enters, he'll throw a jab and then he dips down this way every time, and then he'll come back up with a hook. Pantoja started timing him with an uppercut whenever he would dip on that entry after the jab, and it was very fucking smart. And it was cool to see a guy whose main game is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu make a read in the striking realm and use it and have success with it. Like, Moreno had a lot of success on the feet, but there were moments where Pantoja did also. And Pantoja was the only one that got a knockdown. That guy's chin is made of fucking what? What's it made out of? I mean, he got hit with head kicks. He got hit with everything in the fucking book. Elbows, hooks, like probably 100 fucking jabs. Eats it all. Doesn't even really look like fucking... He never looked like he was about to be finished. Do you know what I mean? That was an amazing fight. Brandon Moreno definitely improved in the grappling department, right? Pantoja was not able to submit him. And not even really get all that close, to be honest. Moreno was on the hand fighting from the moment they would hit the ground to the moment they were back up. Brandon Moreno's scrambles are fucking incredible. The fact that Pantoja had never been to a fourth round before is also very impressive because he was able to continue on. The fact that he's 33 years old at flyweight and just beat Brandon Moreno in his prime, largely on the feet. Well, no. Sorry, I don't want to say it. The fight took place largely on the feet, so that's what's impressive. He didn't beat him on the feet necessarily, but the one judge, I can't remember who it was, that scored it 49-46 Brandon Moreno's fucking whack. Unless one of you's got that scorecard, you explain it to me. The problem I saw, so usually when there's a round where it's like, oh, one guy takes the back and holds the body triangle, but the other guy did damage, I would give it to the guy that did damage. But the problem is that Brandon Moreno's damage on Pantoja, I don't think outweighed the shit that Pantoja did, because Pantoja was also landing damage. So that's what round 3 was for me. I was keeping track of like when they were having moments, and to me it seemed that Pantoja had just a few more moments than Brandon Moreno, and that's why I ultimately thought that the scorecards were fair. But great fight, phenomenal. We could potentially see a rematch. I mean, fuck, I would watch those guys fight 10 times. You know what I mean? I know that happens a lot at flyweight, and it could maybe get a little exhausting, but who wouldn't want to see that again, honestly? You know what I mean? All right, main event time, boys. Main event time. I'm glad I went with the safe pick, Alexander, the great Volkanovski, the featherweight GOAT DC, you fucking muppet. Okay. Yair Rodriguez was nothing to him. But one thing I want to talk about. Juliana Pena should not be allowed at UFC events. She should have her mouth sewed fucking shut. Okay? Because she is now the new Mrs. Alvarez, and I don't want to hear it. All I can hear is her shrill, disgusting voice screaming instructions to Yair Rodriguez when she got fucking dominated on the ground in her second fight with Amanda Nunes. And I know that she got the rear naked choke in the first fight, but that was because Amanda Nunes was hurt on the feet first. To be fair, she was giving sound advice for a moment there, but my God. Shut the fuck up. And also, dude, her mouth is too big. You could fit 3 bananas in there, I reckon. Maybe even 4. And I wish to God that somebody would fucking do that, because then I wouldn't have to hear her scream. I literally had to turn the volume down to 2 because I was getting angry at hearing her. And I thought, fucking Christ, I thought this was done and over with when Eddie Alvarez left the UFC. But apparently not, and I have to listen to Juliana Pena do it now when a Mexican fighter's fighting. Oh. Yair Rodriguez was fucking nothing to Alexander Volkanovski. That was a very impressive performance. What a fucking G. Okay? Absolute G. And he just went full fucking Terminator. I said old school, rugby strength, takedown and smash Volk, and I was right to an extent, but I need to give Volk his full credit, because his grappling has improved leaps and bounds, which I also said, because of training with Craig Jones. He almost cinched up an arm triangle. He is just completely dominant on the ground. There was never really a moment in that fight at all where Yair Rodriguez looked like he was about to start pulling ahead or having success or doing something. You know what I mean? Incredible fucking performance by Alexander Volkanovski. And what's annoying is that Islam Makhachev is Dagestan-y, or whatever the fuck. And we're going to have to wait till October to see that bitch-ass fight. And it'll probably be against Charles Oliveira. So in the meantime, Volk needs to fuck up Ilia Topuria. And then fight Islam Makhachev. Yup. I wish fucking Islam would fight more than once or twice a year. It's so annoying, dude. I can't believe that, man. That was incredible. Yair Rodriguez looked like, when he got up off the ground after the finish, he was like, yeah, hey, fucking wow. Do you know what I mean? Incredible shit from Alexander Volkanovski. Complete and total domination through 3 rounds. And one of the most impressive parts was that he hurt him on the feet. Big right hand. And then absolutely relentless, never let off the gas. Beat the fucking brakes off of Yair Rodriguez. That was incredible, man. Incredible. The guy is on his way to being the GOAT. The guy rarely fouls anybody. I think he might have hit the cup of Yair, or the head clash was what it was. Not totally his fault, right? Yair dipped at the same time as he dipped. He rarely ever fouls anybody. He's never tested positive for anything. And he fucking destroys guys. He doesn't just win. He dismantles you. And he did that to Yair Rodriguez, a guy who a lot of people thought was extremely, including myself. I picked Volkanovski to win, but people knew how dangerous Yair Rodriguez could potentially be. And I was laughing when Volk was like, oh, I had Blood Diamond helping me. And I'm like, fucking Christ, man. Okay, dude, that's not the most reassuring feeling. But it didn't matter. And he looked amazing doing it. And Volk is still the 145-pound king. I don't know. I don't see anybody beating him at 145 pounds. I think he will retire the champion. You know what I mean? And good on him, dude. That was a fucking great performance. Incredible. I don't know. I don't have much else to say about it. That was just phenomenal, dude. He looked so good on the ground. So completely dominant. And then the fact that he hurt him on the feet to end things, was cherry on top. Anyways, dude, that's the end of this video. That's all I got to say about UFC 290. It was incredible. There might be other topics that I think of in the beginning of this week that I will do videos on, but initial reaction to this is over. Like and subscribe. I would greatly appreciate it. I'll see you at the next one. Bye-bye.